This is my first video on this channel. In some ways, it is the precipice of a new journey, a point at which a new path can unfold. Making this vow to art will open up a path for my life and be a new direction to go in. This is a vow to myself and to my own artwork to continue creating, whatever it may be. The main purpose for the creation of this channel and this vow is to create a place where I can hold myself accountable with my art and revive the passion for art that I have in me somewhere. This is me coming back to art after a very long time of producing next to nothing. I want this to be a place where I can share my progress and talk about art or several topics of discussion beyond the methods or forms of art, but also our perception of it. I want to create a vow to honing my craft and continue this vow to creating art. I want to show my mistakes. I want to show the things I can improve on and share a part of myself with you along this sort of journey. More importantly, this is part of breaking the long silence I've had. I want to speak my mind, share discussion about subjects or ideas I find fascinating. I want to talk about things, and I want to make things I've never made before, test myself, learn through trial and error. I want to get back into making art, and this is an outlet for me to share my passion and my experience. In time, you will see the passion being put into the work. You will see the progress I've made and see a transformation of my thoughts and my drawings and how I approach art. This is going to be a place for me to express myself, a place to improve myself, and I want to share that with all of you. I am currently drawing a path of stairs leading to a point that reaches a gate. Beyond that gate is the unknown. It's the next step, it's the future, it's something that lies beyond. I'm currently on that path, climbing those steps, looking forward. Each step represents a goal to achieve as some form of progress, a principle of my life or my artwork, the stepping stones on this path and in my life. I'm at the bottom of these steps looking at the possibilities of what lies beyond, and I've only taken the first step. That first step is this video. This is the first full drawing I've made in 3 years. Some things are coming back to me, and some things I've never even drawn before. I'm trying new things. I don't want to just continue to draw what I was doing before. I'm still processing exactly how I'm going to get back into the swing of things, but I think this is the most important part, to just start, to promise myself to be disciplined and take action. Getting back into art is a strange feeling. It's the feeling of a relationship that was severed and coming back to now is like having to force it. I have to force myself to pick up the pen, which is a new feeling for me. It was daunting. I sort of paused to contemplate as I grasped the weight of the pen and the weight of my decision to draw again. I was searching for comfort, the way I could just pick it up. Muscle memory could kick in and I could simply draw. But it's not there anymore. I don't feel the senses I once had. I can't rely on my intuition anymore to guide me. My creative instincts and habits have been gone for a long time, or at least most of it has. I've forgotten everything, but I think somewhere in there is this little spark, this inkling of a prior knowledge I've developed inside me throughout the years. What I'm going to do is basically start improving. To start this journey, I'm going to start exercising these sketches and following tutorials just like I did when I first started making art. Art is a very slow process, inherently, and even more so when you are just starting or coming back again to something new. I suppose I should get on with my goals for this channel. Everything will ultimately improve, and I will be able to refine what exactly my format is and find my calling or niche and change things. But this is my current idea for this channel, and something that will currently work for me. I mentioned wanting to express myself, and that's exactly what I want to do. I think I want to make something more than these vapid time lapses or man draws for a very long time, or drawing sessions where you get to hear every cough, every snort, or silence as some dude draws. I want to say something that is meaningful and impactful. Hell, maybe what I say is more engaging than the art itself. I want to make this place a place that I can sort of catalog my thoughts. I'm going to continue writing down my thoughts, present discussions, and go off on tangents about some topic I'm passionate about or have something to say. I want this place to feel like an expression of myself, where I can speak my mind and draw whatever I want. As far as the artwork itself, right now I'm at a pace that is a bit slow and comparatively limited to where I want to be. And I'm also far away from what exactly I want to do with this channel and what I want it to be in the future. I'm not quite up to the level of quality that I want to be. But I want to share these new drawings that I make and occasionally record a session in between these sessions to break it up, perhaps at the end of each month or beginning of a new one. I will open up my current sketchbook to share what I'm drawing, show the pieces I've made after a tutorial or some sort of idea came to my head. I think showing the reality of my pace or my process will provide a fantastic catalog of progress and insight later down the road. I can look now at these humble beginnings and be proud of the progress I've made, and you will be able to see that too. Essentially, my goal is to talk and show my drawings and what I'm doing right now, showing the process. It took me 4 hours to complete this one sketch, so I've cut that down and sped it up a bit for viewing pleasure. One of my other main goals for this channel is I'm going to try my best not to sound like some pretentious asshole on the internet. There's too many of those already, and I don't need to be that. I kind of want to start simple. Explore ideas, rationalize my thoughts. I want to feel unrestricted in my ability to talk about things, and give myself the opportunity to make mistakes. I think like a perfectionist, like most artists do, but I've changed a lot in these years. So taking a step back, starting slow, starting rough, sharing my failures, it's not something I'm afraid to do anymore. What's important now is managing my time effectively, doing something that is feasible for me and for my schedule. Give myself time to develop, think, and improve in some way, and be worried less about the quality of the drawings I'm making, but the quality of the improvements that I can make. So when I talk about ideas, talk about certain topics surrounding art, I see that as a worthwhile idea to explore. I'm going to be positive, and I'm going to be negative. I see many art channels trying to spread messages of positivity, and I think it's stupid. I'm not going to do what these other people are doing. I'm sick of the positivity trend. I see these art channels trying to create a safe space where people don't get their feelings hurt, and I just have to fucking laugh sometimes. Reality is not like that. It's full of darkness. It's full of despair, tragedy, and grief. Life is not as black and white as some artworks may be. Life is very gray. I will talk about the uplifting ideas and promote positive ideas, and I will also share the darker and more negative views I have on the world and the perceptions around art that may be negative. I don't think shying away from that is a bad idea, especially when I want to make this channel to be about expressing myself And if I'm going to be genuine, I'm not going to shy away from the darker aspects. I think many people try to shy away from the negative ideas and pretend everything is positive to a point where they are ignorant to the whole point of understanding and rationalizing your own thoughts about the world. I view it as exploring critically, justifying and critiquing my arguments. I think trying to be positive is antithetical to the idea of critical understanding. Since I've been getting back into art, I've seen all these art positivity gurus trying to always preach some random, however meaningless positive spin on everything they do. Maybe that sort of message is what makes them appealing to people, and what makes them money and gives them attention. I get that, I guess, but I'm not like that. I don't give a fuck. I see these videos and I think of how many bold-faced lies, misrepresentations, falsities, and when every video they make is like that. Are you really genuine in that process? Aren't there bad things that happen? Perhaps it's normal to just filter all that out and produce these watered down, filtered nonsense and entertainment videos online. I'm not going to do that sort of thing. I'm going to be true to who I am, what I think. Include the positive and negatives of anything I try to analyze and explore the ideas of. It's similar to practicing the analysis of positives and negatives in artwork. You have to think critically to understand the underlying issues of the work. Sometimes they are positive and sometimes they are negative. To shy away from one or the other is to lie. I want to be genuine, especially in a world where I see people attempting to be nice while talking about someone's artwork. They try to be nice while critiquing. They try to be nice just for the sake of being nice. They would rather skirt around the idea of it being bad than just saying what it is. It's trying not to hurt people's feelings, and it's ultimately more harmful to do. They water down their thoughts for the presumption of thin skin. I think it's sad, insulting, and ultimately a pathetic display of the toxic results of positivity. I would like to call it toxic positivity. I'll probably explore that further and explore critiquing art fully later on, but I just think no one is bad for stating the truth. To be genuine or express their opinions, you can be blunt, harsh, critical, and still maintain a moral compass. They'll say you have no heart, but I don't think they understand the purpose of expressing yourself fully. Perhaps that view is derived from the philosophy of the military having a large impact on my life. It's about honor and integrity, and the military tends to have that virtue in spades, especially in comparison to the outside world, which I've come to realize. I suppose the entire reason I feel passionate about this idea of positive and negative critical understanding, whatever, is because there is an importance to critical thought, to critical exploration, and the inherent nature of the expression of ideas. I think being genuine is an important part of my character. And in my view, most of society currently lacks that vital aspect of genuine expression. After doing a long period in my life of silence. No social media, no internet, just internal reflection and understanding. And when I got to see the world around me fresh again in a new way, when I came out of that, I couldn't help but see the world this way, and the way I see it now. People, social pages, YouTube videos, and everything I see, I feel like I see lies, blatant exaggeration and falsity that has soaked its way into every facet of our world. I think it's immoral and wrong. People will drown out truth and helpful information that is free to everyone, then hide that free information and demand you pay them for their true and better information for their services based on these falsehoods and these schemes. Those demanding your money will cover up truth with lies for monetary gain. I think the world and many people on this planet are sickening, full of sin, greed, and other poor motivations for living, such as consumerism and materialism, which we face an epidemic of. I myself am struggling with the consumeristic nature of a society. I find myself browsing on Amazon and browsing these other things I'm fascinated with, such as let's say Warhammer 40k and G.I. Joe, and I can't help but think to myself, what am I doing? Is this what I should be doing with my life? Is this where I should be dedicating my time and my attention to? Because it feels so valueless sometimes to continuously consume. But then I realize that consumption that I do sometimes inspires me to produce. Limiting myself in my consumption has brought me many positive benefits, but I've also seen the darker side where I have gone fully into the idea of the consumerism that we have involved ourselves with that has become commonplace. I saw recently the news story about the pink Stanley Cups and people stampeding Target stores. And I think how far we have fallen from any sense of delayed gratification, self-reflection, and understanding. There's a new thing like that every week. I think that obviously the solution to deal with the consumeristic society that we live in is to limit ourselves ultimately. It is to understand ourselves and understand the world. It is to be disciplined and balanced in the way we consume, which I think has ultimately left a lot of people these days. I think these people I talked about when trying to, the people trying to spread positivity, showing face, and pretending the world is good, and life is good, and nothing is wrong. I think these sort of positivity people are hypocritical. I don't believe you. I just don't believe these art channels or these YouTubers. They are all putting on some sort of display. They are acting. These people are trying to sell you something. And I don't know how long it will take or how many examples people need to realize that about our world. The consumerism and the positivity and all these things that ultimately provide your life with little value, but you think they do. Even people who shout for positivity, and they actually believe what they say. They believe being positive towards life is inherently this all-encompassing boon to life. That promoting some positive message and people feeling good about themselves is a good thing. I don't think it is. I just don't view the world that way. That is a fantasy. If you can believe it, I felt that life was full of joy and positivity, and I devoted myself to being uplifting and forward-thinking and positive, and that was when I was a young kid. Reality then set in, and I realized I was lying to myself. It took these experiences and witnessing the world and a lot of self-reflection and internal understanding to realize that I just can't go back to being some ignorant, mindless, positive person again. Maybe in time I will learn to be more positive despite the fact that our world is so corrupt, and I will find the value in being positive, and I will find the value in being negative, and I will learn to balance the two. I suppose what I just want to say throughout all this rambling, I suppose, about how terrible people and how the world is awful, is that there is a lesson to all of this. That I learned all I can do in my life is to act how I believe I should, and choose to express myself in the way that I believe is most genuine. I can't control how others act. And to act separate from the beliefs, traditions, and philosophy of society is how I want to act. As a sort of Ronin of the society, I can choose how to express myself beyond the structures and confines. It's the only thing I have control of. So in that aim, I'm not going to do these sorts of things, the positivity, the things I see as immoral on my channel. I'm going to behave the way that I think I should. I'm going to speak about the darkness of this world, express myself genuinely, and accept that the world is a terrible place. But I can choose not to engage in life like others do, and create my channel as a genuine expression of myself, something separate from the very immoral society we live in. At least that's how I view it right now. I think part of finding my voice is not shaping it in accordance with how society or other people think I should. I think integrity, honor, and truth are key pillars to speaking my mind and how I choose to speak. I want to share that philosophy and that way of thinking through my videos and the way I discuss things on this YouTube. It's something that I value and believe is the right thing to do. If this channel is supposed to be an outlet and an expression of my thoughts, I need to express my beliefs. This is a form of what I want to do on this channel. Talk about things like that. Form my thoughts around a certain subject. Rationalize my thoughts and share them. It's my belief that art is a science and a philosophy. I believe there are objective principles of art analysis that are positive and negative that exist, regardless of someone's opinions or subjective feelings about something. There are objective realities in art. Then there is the philosophy. The way we view the world shapes our art. It is how art is viewed, created, and displayed to the world. The philosophy of art is how it interacts with our minds and our society. I want to explore these sort of concepts that challenge me. Trying to conform to some arbitrary standards of what society has standardized as what an art channel should be is harmful to who I am and expressing myself. I've tried to conform to these sorts of things before, and ultimately I don't like where it led. Some might think an art channel should be some positive or uplifting story, some advice, some tutorial, or some form of entertainment and amusement, or just for showing off your artwork or for attention, engaging with some sort of community. I don't know that I'm here for that. I want to explore the ideas. I want to explore ideas, and I want to explore art itself. If this channel is a place where I am to express myself, it has to be unique to the way I think and believe, what I view as moral or right, to be genuine and to have integrity with what I do. That is the vow I have made to myself. It is also the vow that I am making to this channel and my life, that the path I walk now is mine alone. I hope you can see now what I believe is worthy of discussion. Some insight into the way I view the world as an exploration of what art is. Art is a way of viewing the world, seeing the world itself, a vision into the perception of things. Often the most revolutionary artists are not those trying to utilize the systems they live within and become popular, but those on the fringes of society trying to unmask the reality of the world. I believe myself to be on the fringes, the outskirts. I do not desire attention or popularity, and in that way very different from what most artists want. Fame or recognition, or something resembling success in the view of society. A true and final justification for the many years of dedication to their craft. I just want to share my vision, how I see things, how I think the world's true modus operandi exists as. In a way, our words are art. It is words and language that can convey the inner state of an artist. That's something that speaking can do that an aesthetic work can never accomplish. An aesthetic work may transmit a suggestion or a message as to the state of the eyes, the state of the world, or the artist. But speaking, now that is an invaluable source of expression and understanding. That's why I am choosing to speak, because I have learned that the visual world is not the only world that is worth sharing and expressing. Ink on a paper cannot fully express the complicated electrical pulses of our mind so well as to capture a lifetime of thinking and understanding. Artwork can be glimpses into the words and the soul of an artist, yes, but speaking is a very powerful tool. When mishandled, results in catastrophe and confusion, a society in disarray. I believe that to be our world today. We use words carelessly, so mindlessly, so fruitlessly, we neglect the understanding of our inner selves and seek external validation. My vow is to not seek such things. My vow is to understand the world in myself. My vow is to express what I understand and yet cannot understand. I am an artist, so I create to ease my mind. The very definition has been broadened so far. Our only true definition for what the purposeful act of expression is, we call art. We call people who create music artists. We call painters artists. We call filmmakers artists. We call writers artists. Why? Is it simply to categorize and make sense of the inexplicable phenomenon of creation? We try to rationalize things we create by putting it in a box, giving it a genre, give it a name, a label, put it in a period or a place of time, give it a trendy name, rank it, evaluate it, and give it a label. Label the art with numbers, price tags, minutes or hours of its existence, and therefore value. We try to value art beyond itself. We want to rationalize not the thing itself, but its valuation. We create a mental model to understand value. This video's valuation by society can be seen by its likes, its number of views, its number of shares. We turn our art and ourselves into commodities. We place ourselves on social media to understand our ranking in a hierarchy, to understand what is or is not valuable to society with numbers. Constantly chasing the higher and higher arbitrary numbers until we are satisfied with the external evaluation of our work by society. That is art now. That is what art has become. It has become a globalized mess of valuations, economies, and people who have no idea the meaning or value behind a piece of art, other than the price tag associated with it, the number of likes it has received on social media. Is that the purpose of art? To be filtered down and assessed by numbers? Is art so meaningless now we turn it into a number? There is so much art in this world now than ever before. We don't process the art itself. We don't think about the rings inside of a tree. We don't value the thoughtful expression and understanding a piece might have. We value its price, its likes, its renown, its popularity in a market. It's a depressing state we live in. Thoughtless, consumeristic, to seek acceptance, validation, and affirmation rather than understanding. Vanity rather than thought. It is fame and pride. Something I've come across these days a lot is the idea of having pride in your work. This emotional and ultimately positive sentiment that as long as you are proud of yourself and proud of your work, as long as you feel good, as long as you have pride in the things you do, as long as you accept yourself and what your actions may be, you can learn happiness. Maybe it is a more modern thought that I don't feel has been present throughout my entire life. It is new. And I think it is a terrible philosophy. The idea that you should think positively of yourself to excess. In excess. Think positively of the work you do. Think positively about your pride. Think positively about your ego. To me, it sounds like a sin. I'm not religious, but it is a sin. to excess, to constantly hold some unreasonable and excessive pride in something. Frankly, it's egotistical and not based in reality. I believe pride is something to be avoided, to stray away from, to run from, because it is pride that killed the lion, not fear. It is courage that should be utilized as a tool for action, not comfort, soothing the mind from the reality they exist in as the impetus for their actions and a greater world. How does telling yourself, my art is good, when it is not, give us the courage to improve? What part of having pride in ourselves and our artwork to an excessive degree? I suppose that is the key word. Excessive. It is ultimately excess in pride, excess in ego. That is our undoing. It is far better to acknowledge our strengths, our weaknesses, the fear we feel inside of ourselves, not our constant pride in all that we do. Much like toxic positivity, as I expressed earlier, the excess of positives and strengths to undermine the reality and the true negative weaknesses that exist. I suppose I have a problem with the way we use words like pride and positivity, treating them as inherently good virtues, even when in excess. Because this will lead to bad habits. It will lead to you devolving yourself as an individual and as a society for something that is fake. Ego and pride should be based in reality, not on the whimsical fantasy that you are better than you are, or that your artwork is better than it is. Living as a very grounded individual based on the evaluation of self-reflection and understanding about your life and your own artwork, and understanding the rationale behind your quality as an individual and your quality as an artist and your quality of your work. Basing that in reality is far more valuable than believing it is better than it is. Self-respect to moderate your pride in your accomplishments is valuable for your self-conscious and your very being. I suppose this issue stems from the more modern idea of what mental health is. I suppose these sorts of ideas of toxic positivity and the excessive belief that you should feel better about yourself, that you should feel happy, I suppose these are more modern things. This is a trend. These sorts of, I want to say, mental models and inventions about how we should live our lives, with full of pride, full of consumerism, full of some sort of excess in happiness, but not acknowledge the value of the negative thoughts we experience as a human being. To neglect the negatives, to neglect the very important reality that we live in for the sake of some sort of idea of what happiness is. And I suppose it sort of stems from the idea of self-actualization and the belief that we should, I don't know, I suppose, create habits and explore our mind to create better habits, we need to first analyze what better habits are, what better things to do with our lives there are than these other terrible things that you could do, that I've expressed my feelings about. Ultimately, I think a lot of these more positive outlooks really choose to neglect the negative. When we see social media, we see it through a lens, a filter. It is a poor way of living to live life that way, because it is not reality. It is unhealthy. And I guess with the idea of self-actualization and the idea that you should realize yourself, I think in order to analyze yourself, in order to realize yourself, you need to understand things. You need to understand reality. You need to understand the world. You need to understand your feelings. I think it is very childish to believe you are safe. You are comforted by the excess of pride in your work, or the excess of happiness, or the excess of positivity, because those will ultimately be your undoing. They will produce feelings that will negatively impact your artwork. Any form of excess will cause that. Any form of excess will ultimately lead to the degradation of something else in your life. I have felt this. I have felt the need to fill a hole in your life and try to fill it with something else. I have felt the need of consumerism. I have felt the need to feel happy about who I am. I have felt the need to feel strength in the positivity of the ego and the positivity of my own artwork. I have felt that need. And for some time I have given into that. I have, in my mind, sinned. I have made mistakes. I have done that sort of thing. And I think it took a long journey. It took a lot of self-reflection and understanding about reality and life to understand those feelings. So that's why I want to speak out about this, because ultimately the very nature of what you are producing stems from your mind. What the art I produce stems from my mind. And the art I produced when I was positive, and I believed I myself could do absolutely anything, and I believed I was the best artist in the world, and I believed all these things. That is when I suffered most. When I lied to myself. When I pretended if all of life was good when it wasn't. I think lying to yourself, when I lied to myself, it was the most horrific experience I could have had that has stuck with me forever. I think lying to ourselves is easy to do, but it leaves us in a trap. We trap ourselves with the idea that we are better than we are. We trap ourselves in our own excess. We create a bubble that cannot be broken. And if we delve too far into the rabbit hole, that bubble will not burst. It will implode. You yourself will be trapped and confined by the bubble you produce around yourself to think yourself better than you are, to think the world is more positive than it is. That is the idea I want to explore. That is the idea I want to get across. You will trap yourself in a bubble. I have done that before. I have strayed too far from what reality was, too far from what reality is. And it is not a positive thing to experience. I suppose some of the more negative aspects and results of this, the consequences of this, I can easily display by telling you to go out into the world and look on the internet. We lie to ourselves. We produce not for the creation of the art itself. We create for happiness. We create for approval. I think many artists just forget the idea of the act of creation, and they use art as a way to feel better about themselves. They view art as a method to feel acceptance, to feel affirmed in their decisions in life. They use art as an excuse to degrade themselves and devote themselves to something that does not matter. And I suppose that is a more difficult conversation about the meaning of art, which maybe I'll talk about eventually, but the ultimate point being that the way we treat our art is partially how we treat ourselves, how we treat our mind. And it's very important to take into account the reality of your mind, to understand yourself further than what some person on the internet might say. No self-help person can ever help you understand yourself better than you already can. I think one of the most difficult things to do is to live your life that way, to live in perfect harmony with yourself and reality, to have self-respect and moderate your pride in your accomplishments and your conscious being. I think the real root of all these problems comes to a meaningful life, the idea of the examined life. To continue observing and understanding the world in yourself. I believe it is a quote. The unexamined life is not worth living. That has really driven some of my thinking about why I want to speak, why I wanted to delve into my mind further and understand myself and understand reality, because that is true. We find meaning in examining things and understanding ourselves and understanding the world. We can understand our lives further should we just examine ourselves fully, critically, positive and negative, to give ourselves meaning and purpose, instead of filling it by buying things, instead of filling your life, filling your meaningless, purposeless life by filling it with things, filling it with unnecessary thoughts, filling it with positivity. We're trying to fill a hole in our lives that is ultimately made larger by the acts we think are helping ourselves. I think I'll probably touch on consumerism and how I've dealt with that, and how I'm dealing with that still, because it's still an issue I'm struggling with, despite all my self-reflection, despite my periods of long silence, despite my absence from the idea of missing out on life, the feeling that I need to buy something to be accepted. That's an important idea to get away from, and I'm still dealing with that. Even after all the self-reflection I've had, I'm still dealing with that, because ultimately, that is the reality that we live in. We are based on consuming. And I would like to be producing more instead of consuming more. That is why I am making this channel. That is why I want to make art again. Because I cannot live my life endlessly trying to fill a hole with consumption. I want to live a more balanced life. To understand the boundaries of excess. To understand the boundaries of my own art. To understand the boundaries of my ego. To understand the boundaries of philosophy and examining life. I want to think and examine the ideas of art. Because art has given my life meaning and purpose beyond approval from others, beyond the simple idea of art itself being an aesthetic work that you are to produce and create and share and sell. The act of creation gives my life meaning and purpose. The act of picking up a pencil and creating something where there was once nothing. That is what has given my life meaning and purpose. I suppose now is the point where I should begin to examine the work I've created right now that you are seeing. I may eventually improve how I do this, but for now, I want to just look at the basic principles of what I've done, the thinking behind my artwork, the thinking behind the lines I've drawn so far, and I think you will see the finished work coming up soon. I think I've been inspired a lot by Japanese architecture and history, the samurai and the shogun and the I don't know. I want to say the warriors and the cultures and traditions of Japanese culture and in Eastern culture in general, the Asian philosophy. I have several books sitting on my desk about the Eastern philosophy, the art of war, of course, the Tao Te Ching, the Dakoto, the Way of the Samurai, the Book of the Five Rings. I'm just looking around my room, and I also have several different Japanese films that I've watched and documentaries. I've become very inspired by the Japanese culture as of late, and that's been going on for a while now. I think over the last few years, I think Japanese philosophy and culture has really inspired a lot of the things that I do and how I live my life and how I think. You know, I suppose early on in high school, I became fascinated with the Greeks and the Romans and the Spartans and all that history, all that very valuable Western tradition and philosophy. And I think I studied that religiously, almost like a religion, for a long time. But I think the ancients then, at least in the West, didn't address the issues I was facing currently. Ultimately, that stuff is very, very dated. Some of it is useful. The Marcus Aurelius and the Socrates and all that, they're very inspiring. But ultimately, I think they lack a lot of the idea about the meaning of life, I suppose. The principles I was looking for in my life were not there. So I was looking for something, and I was trying to fill it with the idea of the Greek philosophers. And ultimately, I realized that did not lead me to happiness, because they were both so contradictory on what they believed. They were both so all the philosophers were very individual in their thinking. They were very driven by their gods and their society, that ultimately they are not as useful as people have made them out to be. There is a lot to be gained from learning about them and understanding them, but ultimately you have to create your own path of understanding and evolve from that. So anyways, I moved on from that. I in this search for meaning, I suppose, something to about the way of living life that I found really resonated with me was the Japanese and the Japanese way of thinking, and particularly Miyamoto Musashi and his Dokkodo, or the path and the way, and a little bit of Buddhism in here and there, but otherwise it's like, the vows of silence and the discipline and the full focus of your work and your craft. And he was a samurai, and his focus was on his technique and his craft at the exclusion of all other things, which I may or may not disagree with in some regards, because I believe balance is more important than the single focus at the exclusion of all other things. I believe the balance is more important, just as I believe the Buddhist thinking is slightly not something I agree with, because ultimately modern society does not adhere to your religious beliefs, and you cannot make society bend to your beliefs. That is nature. And when Buddhism talks about nature, and they talk about the way of living, and they talk about how they live, they ultimately neglect a very large part of life. They leave so much behind that they become so distant from society that you would think they're from 1,000 years ago. You might think their beliefs and their practices existed thousands and thousands of years ago, and there's a reason for that, because it is a very old way of thinking, and we live in a very modern society, and I believe inherently that we should adapt and accept society as it is, not reject it and go into some sort of silence and go into the monastery and become a monk and detach yourself from reality, detach yourself from everything you hold dear, everything society values. In some ways, there is an aspect of that is valuable. You can do that. You are welcome to do that. There is religious freedom in places like America. And part of that freedom is living the way you want to live. And the Buddhists have a very unique way of living. But ultimately, you have to adapt to reality and become resilient to it. No matter how many vows of silence you take, no matter how many things you do to detach yourself from society, ultimately you will learn and have to learn to integrate yourself with society, because that is how you live. I cannot go off wandering on my own with a sword, like Musashi, and find myself to be the best warrior in the world. You cannot master yourself if you cannot also master society and understand it. So I think those principles are really dated. But I suppose this really gets to the idea of why I'm inspired by the Japanese and all that. But as far as the artwork itself, I'm not happy with it. I don't think I ever am happy with my artwork. And I think that's part of being an artist. I think that's part of living. think it's not being happy with the things you do, not being happy with the things you produce, because it always pushes you to be better. So right now, I think this is the first full drawing I've made since my long break into artwork, and this is the first time I'm really doing environmental work. And I'll get on to my past and my history and all that later on in another video, but like what I've drawn before, and maybe I'll eventually share my sketchbooks, but I don't know if I'll do that right now. But with this piece, I wanted to convey that sort of philosophy, the Japanese philosophy, the Eastern philosophy of integrating nature into part of your life and living with it, living alongside it. Because you can see the steps protruding from the nature. You can see the way structures are built around the organic shapes of society, and how we too can shape nature and live alongside it. Analytically speaking, I think it lacks a lot of things. I think it lacks a lot of dimension. I think it lacks a lot of shading. I think it lacks a lot of fundamental concepts that should be present in it. This is my first time sketching, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of leeway. But the light lamps at the beginning of the steps are completely off. The rocks are weird shapes, and I don't quite grasp the natural landscapes quite well right now. And I'm going to watch a bunch of tutorials to improve on that. I think I had a lot of, I started off pretty bad. I think I had to redraw the very beginning, like the horizon line and the path I wanted to do. I had to redraw that about 3 times, so I cut out some of that in the beginning of the video. But ultimately, I'm kind of okay with what I ended up making out. It was a lot better than the other types I was doing and the other designs I had in my mind. Ultimately, I wasn't really able to create what I wanted to create. I was able to create some semblance of what I had in my head, but I wasn't able to fully realize it, if that makes sense. I need to get better at. So I am working on producing a list of things I need to do to continue working on what I want to work on, and for art specifically, my goals and the things I want to continue drawing. One of those is primarily environmental landscapes. I want to work on environmental artwork. And of course, primarily right now, sketches. And eventually painting and blah, 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 blah. Anyways, I want to work on the environment as a new focus for me. Because I think, partially because of Bob Ross. Partially because of also my father. And the artwork he made when he was a boy. And the artwork he and his mother made together. I want to create these environments that mean something, I guess. I don't know exactly, but that's an area of focus for me. I want to create environments that you can look at, and I think that's a very valuable skill to have. I'm not saying I'm going to become an environmental artist or whatever. I don't go into career shit right now. But just something to draw and something to learn and something to practice. I have a list of stuff like trees and bushes, and I'm going to follow some tutorials on those, and I'm going to improve on those. And then I think obviously I need to work on my perspective a lot. So I'm going to try and work on my perspective, because I think clearly I think you can just look at it and tell it's not up to par. Or at least it's not up to par with where I think it should be. I think it should be much better than it is. I think what I want to create is much better than what this first drawing is. But I suppose this is a good baseline to judge me from. And judge myself from. I think another thing I should be working on is the texture. The texture of the grass, the steps, the stone, the wood, the thatch, the painted wood, I suppose, the stone. I need to work better on textures. I obviously don't want to do color right now. That's far too complicated for me to do when I'm sketching. I don't really value that right now. I think I want to learn these sorts of things that do matter to me, which is the shapes and the textures and the design and understanding these sorts of things before I begin painting, because ultimately this will be something to base something off of. I can create my environments, and then when I can learn to master that, or at least feel I have mastered that, I can move on to that new thing, which would be color and painting and watercolor and all that stuff. That will be something that I can do when I have filled out this entire new sketchbook that I have started with my environmental work for these videos. I think I have another sketchbook that I'm working in just to practice and sketch and just do random things, which I will show you at the end of the month or the beginning of the next month. But I suppose my process right now is trying to relearn. This provided me a lot of good mileage. I think it was about 4.5 hours that I was drawing. And it provided me with something, because I think I was really lacking a fundamental brain rewiring that I needed to do. I sketched some chairs and I sketched some things, and that provided me a little bit of a baseline of what I can do right now. And then this is provided me like I don't want to call it the peak of what I can do right now, but my understanding of environmental art as it is right now. This is my basis for where I can begin improving. And there's a lot more I need to analyze in exactly what I need to improve here. And there's also a lot I need to improve with these videos and maybe how I speak or what I do. But I will probably watch this video several times over just to analyze how I draw, why I drew the things I drew, which doesn't come easily speaking on it and looking at it. There's going to be a lot of things that I notice that I didn't just by staring at it for a while, thinking about it, analyzing it, thinking about it more critically than I am right now just speaking. But looking at it, I think I did something with it. I did something. I don't know what that something is, but I did something. I wanted to do that sort of statue. I wanted to do that tree. I wanted to do that path, and I ultimately made some part of my vision. And that is valuable in itself, I suppose. Well, I suppose this is the end of the video. And I don't know how to end it. I'm struggling for the words. As I should be, I suppose. I need to learn from this, and talking has really interested my mind a lot more. Obviously, some of this was scripted, and some of this I just put in my thoughts there. I tangented from the basic points I wanted to make. And some sections, like this ending section, is entirely me trying to just give my thoughts about my artwork. And ultimately, what I aim to do with these videos is provide something. I don't know what that something is. Maybe it's inspiration, maybe it's insight. Maybe somebody will enjoy this out there. I don't know. I just know I need to put more of myself out there, and this is my way to do that. Well, what's next for me is obviously will be coming next, but this is my first video, and I guess I should be proud of the fact that I've completed it. It's over now. It took me a while to make, fully, to think about and script for some of it. It's not easy to think critically. And I don't know how I want to end this video. Because ultimately, you will take away what you want to take away from this video. And I will take away the many things I can learn from this. And maybe you will provide feedback, or maybe you won't. But that doesn't matter. Because ultimately, I will continue to be creating, and I will continue to try and strive for greatness and be disciplined. No matter what they may look like. This is my end to my first video. This is me breaking the silence. This is my first step. And ultimately, this is the beginning of what I want to do.